get a sense of it? It's kind of a mournful song, isn't it? It's by those paragons of gospel rock, the Eagles. And it's called Wasted Time. Years ago I was asked why I don't title my sermons. I just put in sermon or message or whatever. And the concept was, in my head, was that I found when I did do that in my early years, my eager years of ministry, I would come in with, finely crafted three-point sermons with a well-thought-out title. People read the title, assumed what the message was going to be, and turned their brains off, and that was the rest of it. And so I decided if I didn't put a title on there, they might have to listen, figure out what he's trying to say. And I'm saying that because I don't often think of titles for the things I'm going to say, but often there is a piece of music that does relate to it, as you've discovered over the last few years. And when I read the scriptures that were read today, the parable that was just read by Ellen from the gospel reading from Luke is one that I wish had never been titled. Never. 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 Because everybody has spent centuries focusing on the name of it. The prodigal son. If you actually look at new editions of the Bible, it's now got new titles. It was the prodigal son for about 100 years, and now it's often called the prodigal son, the prodigal father, the prodigal son, lost son. If I was going to call it anything, I'd call it wasted time. It's a waste of time to try and put a title on it. But I'd like to talk to you about it because it is about some interesting qualities of our life. And that sense that we come to at points in our life when we're really mournful about the wasted qualities of our life. But what's wasted? For nigh on to, a couple hundred years of Western understanding of society, the waste here was what the young lad did with the inheritance and how he squandered his material wealth. Atrocious. And we have to put into context what he actually wasted. He didn't take anything that wasn't his. And in his culture and society, asking for the inheritance beforehand was not out of the way. We kind of think you should wait till you're dead to get the inheritance, but they didn't in his day. He was within his rights to say, hey, Dad, I want what's mine. Knowing that his father would have to sell off lands and put people out of work and do all kinds of other things to give him what he wanted. That's the culture. Life wasn't quite as meaningful as it is to us. There was an expectation that everyone was going to live, and they didn't name their children until they're 2 or 3 years of age because they really weren't a person until they had a name, and there's no point in naming somebody who wasn't going to live. And that sounds harsh and cruel, but that's the way that's their world. So what was wasted? We look at that, he blew the fortune. That's what my father would have said about my early days, especially my first years in college. This young man sought something. He sought something desperately. He wanted to be on his own. He wanted to earn his freedom. He wanted to get out and do. And he did. And then he found himself indentured to someone else. It says he went to work for somebody. He was hired. He was an indentured servant. He had no material wealth. He was, those of us who have sort of East Coast Newfoundland roots know about the fish merchants who pretty much controlled your life. The company store in Cape Breton where the coal mine owned you. It's the same kind of deal. This guy was indentured to someone, and he realized what he had wasted was his freedom. It wasn't the money. He'd lost his way and given up himself. And he chose to seek relief from that, to find out, if I'm going to be lost in this world and have lost my freedom, if I'm going to have wasted it, then I'm going to go back to where the people at least love me and be indentured in love to them. And he seeks to return to his father. Then there's the other brother, the one that was the good boy. He stayed home. He looked after the family farm and operation. He cared for the estates. He slaved himself to his father's. Was he happy he was back? Anybody remember the story? Was he like, oh, my brother, you're home, it's great, let's go hang out together? No, he wasn't, right? Why was he mad? Yeah. His brother came back. He got to have all his freedom. What was his one intent in life? The older brother. He spent his entire life doing something for one reason. The expectation that he would get his just deserts. He would get his due. He wasted what he wanted, which is what his brother had done. He stayed in the hope that he would get it all. He wasted his life in a false dream, for a false hope, for material gain. None of them were living. They weren't living. They weren't waking up in a day and going, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. It's not about what I'm going to get tomorrow for living today. It's not about who I have to serve in that sense, the worldly goods. They had become entrapped by the things of this world, the things that they owned, or the things that I would say owned them. Why? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Why do we allow ourselves to be so caught up? Everybody's got to have a dream. But is the dream realistic? What is the dream? You know, the American ideal in the 1950s and 60s, when some of us were really old, was that there would be, what was that, a chicken in every pot, a house, three-bedroom house, the picket fence, 2 cars in the driveway. What a lovely dream, huh? It's all about stuff. It's all about stuff. Yet, there's people in this world who have no stuff, who have more freedom, more sense of life, more happiness, more hope than those people with stuff do. A friend of mine a number of years ago left a small pastoral charge in southern Quebec. She met a guy. She was on in the border town, actually serving in the border town of Stansted, Quebec, when I was in Rock Island, or in Marion. See, I told you I haven't woken up. Get the right places, Tim? Just outside of Sherbrooke at Waterville. And she met this American who, because her charge went across the border, and she met this American and ended up moving with him to a suburb of Chicago when they got married, and sought to serve in the Methodist Church in the U.S. Yet her husband was in a fairly high-end job, and they were living in a very well-off area of Chicago. And so she went to see the bishop, because they have Methodist church as bishops, to see about an appointment to a local church. And he only had this rather wealthy upper-class community for her to serve in. And she turned her nose up at it. It was really interesting, because her entire life had been on the mission front and dealing with street people and indigenous peoples and people that are on the outs and people with wealth she just did not have much use for. She really did not have much use for. So she's on the point of refusing and thinking that she'll just rethink her career when the bishop looks at her and says, so rich people don't need God? And she looked at him and says, what? And he says, you're telling me rich people don't need God? She goes, well, I didn't say that. And she goes, yes, you did. And he says, and they certainly need somebody like you more than they need somebody who thinks their wealth is important. So she ended up serving in this very wealthy community and taking pot shots at their wealth the entire time she was there. A rather humbling experience for all, I would think. But there's a lesson in that, too, about what it means to know what your life is worth, what is its value. What are you waiting for? What are you wasting? Is the dream about how big the bank account will be on the day of your retirement? Or is it about how free you feel to live each day fully? What holds you back? The young lad was held back because he couldn't get away fast enough. He had this belief that he was trapped. And so he had to get out of that cage. He got the freedom he wanted, and he wasted that. And he came back to the cage to find the freedom. Interesting, huh? The older brother stayed in the cage and resented anybody who left it. And even when there was a reason to rejoice, could not rejoice, even though the door for his cage had long since been opened. We've always looked at those stories, and that's where the titling comes in. You see, the title causes us to look at other people. It never causes us to look at ourselves. This prodigal son parable, I could always look at that and say, well, that's all those people I knew that, ended up on Skid Row, or it certainly wasn't me. I never had to put myself into it. The title is a third-party thing where you can look at other people and label them with that. Oh, that guy's like the prodigal son. I'm not. Well, actually, I am. I've wasted a lot of good opportunities in my life. But I learned, and I found my freedom in learning it. And I still have my cages. For the longest time, when I was first in the writing community, you got to know that they call me in the writing community the preacher. Go figure. But before that nomenclature was added to me, the name that was on my vest that I wrote under, that for a lot of years people knew me as, was Freebird. Because I used to describe myself as a person who had found the door to his cage and knew how to open it and could fly free if I chose, or take the security of the cage when I needed to. And really that's what we're talking about in faith, is that God gives us the opportunity to break out of those prisons, to release the chains from the prisoners, to open the eyes of the blind, to unstop the ears of the deaf. And when we're looking at other people, we're looking at the wrong people. We should be looking at the ones we see in the reflections in the mirrors. And understand that there's many things to waste in this world, and it isn't beginning and ending with our bank accounts. There is all kinds of understandings of self and our faith and our abilities that we give up. If you don't believe me, find somebody and pay them a compliment. And the first thing they will do is refuse it. Oh, that's a lovely dress you're wearing. Oh, it's just this old thing I picked up someplace. That's what I say when they tell me I'm wearing a nice dress. Got them. When I'm going to talk about Saturday nights. Yeah, you distracted me. But you see what happened? You know this is true. People pay you a compliment, you turn it down. Where's your freedom? What have you done? What's the cage you're living in when you start doing that? Why not understand who you are, what you are, where you are, how you are? Be who you are. The only one who's had any sense of happiness in this story was the father. whose one and only reason, by the way, for having the party, do you remember it? It was a pure and simple celebration because the son was there. Not because the son had changed his ways. Not because the older brother had a better attitude. Can you imagine living with some dour person who just wants to inherit what you have, and just can't live today because he's waiting for tomorrow? He even says, I never even took so much as one goat to have a party with my friends. It's not the man you want to hang out with. And here's this father who's got this dour son and this son who just doesn't know what he wants. And when just because they're there, that's the reason. Your son is here. Your brother is here. We will celebrate. Think about that. If you want to extrapolate and anthropomorphize God, we can say that the God that loves us like that is going to have a celebration today just because we're here. And when you see your life as in the present, as in the moment, as having merit just because you're there, then that changes the day. And if you change every day, one day at a time, if you do this, then the whole life has meaning. But if you wait for the day when you will have meaning, if you wait for the day when it will be okay, when you wait for the future to come, it never will arrive. It never will arrive. I meet so many people who do not like their life. They're waiting. Can't wait till I'm grown up and my parents will listen to me. That's not going to happen. I can't wait for the day when I retire and I'll be free. That's not going to happen. You won't know what to do with yourself. I can't wait till I have enough to do this. Have you ever heard these phrases? Ever said them to yourself? Why? It is sufficient for the day. And this poem, this parable, should have no title other than A Look in the Mirror. Wasted time. True, huh? And I love that. You hear that downstairs?
That's one kid down there.
I know.
Oh, no, there's two.
It's two. And I got to say that I am so impressed that this congregation can transform two quiet people into noisemakers. God bless you. Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. Knowing to live in the moment and live fully and be free.